Thanks for joining us at Right On Replicas, where we're proud to bring you the best scale model kit reviews on the planet.
This review is brought to you in part by Dean's Hobby Stop in Owasso, Michigan. Dean's has one of the Midwest's largest selections of used kits at great prices. They also feature new kits and supplies as well. Call Dean's to get their mail order list featuring hundreds of vintage kits, or check their website for great deals on both new and classic models. AMT's 32 Ford Phantom Vickie is our review this time, and it's a 1/25th scale kit from AMT number 30089 at a skill level 2 for the intermediate builder. Now, the Phantom is a body style that was never produced originally, and Ford built an open seat 4-door Phaeton in 32, but not as a 2-door. Now, this kit, issued in 2000, also came in a pre-decorated or pre-painted version. It's based on the 32 Ford street rod parts. Now, the kit contains 107 pieces, not all of which are used. The decals are easy to use, and the kit is molded in light gray, chrome, clear, and clear red. Now, the tires are solid. They've got good tread and some sidewall detail. When you're done, the car is about 5.5 inches long, 3 inches wide, and 2 inches high. And, I think I hear Newt knocking on the glass there. He's our program director with a question. Come on in, Newt.
Hey, that looks like something I saw at the Dream Cruise. Was that ever a real car?
Well, Newt, I don't think so, but I'm pretty sure it's inspired a lot of copycats that fell in love with this styling. Here are the contents of the kit. As you can see, they're pretty clean. This is a nice sample. Now, the kit's no longer made, but you can still find these online and at larger hobby shops. Now, for the most part, we'll be using tube glue for construction. Sometimes, for fragile parts, we'll use some super glue and some white glue for glass. And remember to heed the manufacturer's safety and use guidelines when using any of the products that you see or hear in the review. Here are the decals for the kit. As you can see, these flames are very colorful, but they go on a specific background. They didn't go well with my color. I used the plate and the dash decal, but they come off easily and they go into position well, but you may need plenty of warm water to place that flame decal and maybe even some of the setting solutions. Construction starts with the engine, and you can see here the parts for the head and block portion there on the right, not constructed, and the one in the upper left is done. And we're going to start with those pieces, and for the most part, the engine goes together well, but there's a couple things that aren't addressed in the instructions that we'll go over. So you see here then the heads are assembled, the front plate, the oil pan, and of course the main engine portion. We're going to assemble those according to instructions, and by the way, those are at the end of the review if you need to take another look at those. And here's the completed engine as it's ready to go into the next. Now, here are the parts for the intake you'll need. So you'll also notice there's a parting line longitudinally through things, especially like the air intake cleaner there. So you may want to address that. Here's a look at the assembled intake section. These are the parts, the accessory parts that go onto the engine yet, and of course the main construction's already been done. This is the completed engine from the right side. Also installed at this point are the starter and the headers, which are covered in step 8. And all of the parts of the engine, except for the starter, are semi-gloss black, which is semi-gloss black, and the oil filter is a steel housing with a white filter. The ignition harness is flat black, and the drive belt also flat black with some semi-gloss black pulleys. And the rest are all painted aluminum, so the engine can be assembled and painted all together except for these parts. On the front of the engine here, you'll see that it's not clear in the instruction that the ignition harness should go on before the intake assembly, and the pulley assembly is easier to install before the cross-flow water tube also. On the left side, you'll see that the oil filter and the cooler there are painted steel and white, as we'd mentioned before. On the top side, the ignition harness is shown, and that you can see why it should go on before the intake. And also note the air intake filter has been painted flat black. And now you can see the engine from the rear here, and the headers are not drilled out because they're actually capped to allow the exhaust to run out through the undercarriage. And you'll see that later through exhaust pipes and mufflers. Now gather up the pieces, both the inner and outer wheels and the tires, and you can see the ones on the inside there are completed, the ones on the outside not quite yet. Now the tires are solid, so push the wheel inner and outer parts into the tires, and then paint the inner parts, the inner sides silver, and note the hole in the inner parts, they'll go to line up with the pins on the outer wheel halves. Now we'll turn our attention to the frame here, and the exhaust pipes go on before the reinforcement assembly, the brackets, and then the front cross member can go on before painting as well. And now you see here the engine along with the frame components, exhaust, and the brackets, and this is a custom color. I made this from One Shot Enamel brand paint. I used a quarter of the gold metallic 109, a quarter of the orange 124, a quarter of the medium brown 114, and a quarter of the bright red 104 if you want to try and make a bronze metallic color like this. Otherwise, you can find a color that's similar if you want to get close to this color. Now I mixed the combination with a 1/3 clear and 2 colors color, and I sprayed it with an airbrush. Mixing the color and the clear allows the metallics to show through better. And now here you see we've added the engine to the mounts on the frame after it was painted, and the exhaust pipes then are attached to the bottom of the headers and then out through the back through mufflers, so you can see how that works now. It's time to get out the pieces for the rear end assembly, and as you can see here, they're painted and they're assembled just like this for staging. Here you see the completed rear end along with the pieces there. And by the way, as a reminder, you need to scrape chrome and paint off where you're going to glue parts together so they'll stick. Now these are the parts for the front suspension, and some of the pieces weren't chromed, but they should have been, so those were painted with some chrome paint. So you can go ahead and approximate that with some chrome paint for finish. And so use the instructions to guide you through the construction on that front end, and here's what it will look like when you've got it in position. Now I'd also painted the spreader bar up front there chrome, but you could paint that body color as well. Here is the seats, and of course the back side of the seats there. They're both painted semi-gloss black in this case, and they can be assembled now. Now we can assemble the rest of the floor portions, and the floor pan itself was painted flat black along with the added items there at the back end, and of course the rear seats are also painted semi-gloss black. So we can go ahead and assemble those pieces, and then here you see the seats and the shifter in place. And here you see how I've decorated the steering column, and the rim there is semi-gloss black, along with the mast column there ready for assembly. So here are the interior portions staged. You can see some of the parts are body colored, including the dash. There's also a decal that you would glue into place behind the openings there, and that looks pretty nice. Now it's kind of unusual in that firewall and the inner wheel wells are pushed into the body along with the interior, and it's worked out really nice on this build. Now we can work on the radiator and shroud, and the grill shell is a body color, the radiator a semi-gloss black, and the fan is flat black. The grill has a black wash treatment also to bring out the grill bars. Now we'll work on the body a little bit, and here's the roll pan for the rear end, and it needs to be glued in place, and then the seam puttied so that it's a nice smooth transition. And here you can see it molded in or glued into position. The vertical blue line is the parting line on each side that's easily sanded off before painting. The two body supports are then removed at this time, and note that they're below the body line, which makes them easy to remove and clean up that area. And now it's time to join the main components and sub-assemblies, and I glued the interior assembly to the frame, looking for the contacts and scraping off the glue, and then snugged it down tight. Once that was dried, I spread the body apart a little bit and slipped it over the interior assembly, and it fit very nicely. The grill shell, support bars, steering shaft, the upper radiator hose, wheels, and tires are then assembled at this time too. Now, along with that construction, we're going to add the headlights in place. And here you see one of the headlights has been put into position, and the paint gets scraped off of the left side shock mount there, and that's where the headlight mounts onto. And now use some white or clear glue to mount the windshield glass to the frame. And when you're using some white glue, you need to clamp the glass pretty tightly with something that won't scratch it in order to make sure that it dries into place. There's a raised ridge down the middle of the top of the hood, and originally this would be where a hinge would be, but the modern street rods, quite often they just use a one-piece top, most often fiberglass. So I smoothed that down and removed it to resemble one of the more modern one-piece tops. Just use some successively finer grit sandpapers and then prime it up, and it'll look just like it was made that way. So after the primer was dry, I had painted the hood with some body color, and it just fits into place there, as you can see. Well, here you need to get a little courage, because you have to scrape some of the paint off of that beautiful body up on the cowl there to install the windshield. And once you've done that, scrape a little of the bottom of the windshield contact points there of its chrome plating and glue that into place with some sparing amounts of. Now we'll add the window glass to the roof, and that gets clamped into position and set aside to dry. Apply the plate decal to the license plate bracket there, and stage these parts, and we'll assemble those to the back end. And then here is the rest of the rear of the car after it's been completed, along with the addition of the top there that can be put into place. And as a side note here, the top fits pretty nicely. It doesn't or wouldn't need to be glued into place if you want to remove that for display. And these are all the pieces you had left. This is a single-purpose kit. It has one version, and so all the parts go into building that particular version. Just a few optional decals and parts that you can put in your stash. Well, there you have it. This timeless little kit was, it's over 20 years old now, but the 32 lends itself to all kinds of adaptations and always looks great. It's a classic. You can still find it at online sites, and as you can see, it's got a nice look to it with different color options. You can make it really look different, and it has that sleek look of a really fast but old antique vehicle that's been modernized with some pretty nice appointments. The wheels, the engine, the paint job, etc., and the styling cues have all been adapted for modern road cruising and for car shows galore. So if I were you, I'd buy one and put it on my shelf. Well, we hope you like this step-by-step premium model kit review, and so that you don't miss any more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can do that by clicking on the icon in the lower right of any of our reviews. You can also find us on Facebook or our website, rightonreplicas.com. Thanks.